Oh man, I'm excited. Mike Vrabel on the menu for the New York Jets. I want to talk about the latest rumors surrounding the coach and 3 players that might follow him to New York. Jets! All right, gang, I'm kind of excited. We're talking a little bit more about the future and not so much about the doom and gloom in the now. Some rumors coming out about the potential next head coach for the New York Jets. My number one option, Mike Vrabel. Rich Cimini was on his Flight Deck podcast, dropped a few nuggets that had all of Jet World buzzing. Let's listen to the clip, and then I'll break down my thoughts on Vrabel and 3 players that I think could follow him here.
I want to start with Mike Vrabel, who I think should be at or near the top of the Jets list. Now, many people assume that Vrabel wouldn't even consider the Jets because what's he going to do? He's going to call up one of his mentors, Bill Belichick, and ask him his opinion of the Jets. And we know what Belichick's going to say. He's going to trash the Jets and say, don't take that job if it's offered. But I've talked to people who know Vrabel, and he has told friends that he would consider the Jets as a possibility as long as he likes the GM that they pick. So he says he doesn't care what Belichick thinks. He'll judge the situation based on its own merit.
There's a lot of stuff to pick apart in this little clip from Cimini, and I think it's all pretty interesting because a lot of fans are going to go to the whole Bill Belichick of it all and say Vrabel is from the Belichick tree because he played under Belichick, and Belichick hates the Jets, so he's never going to pick the Jets, let alone like all the chaos and circus that's going on with the New York Jets. He's just not going to want to deal with it. He's going to be able to go wherever he wants. Now, first off, yes, he played under Belichick, got 3 Super Bowls under Belichick, but never coached under Bill Belichick. He coached under Urban Meyer at Ohio State and under Bill O'Brien in Houston before becoming the Titans head coach. So there's not really that connection to Bill Belichick from a coaching perspective. Not to mention, towards the end of his Patriots career, Bill Belichick shipped him off to Kansas City with Matt Castle in exchange for a second-round pick, and I don't think Vrabel was too happy with that at the time that trade happened. So I don't think there's a whole lot of love lost to Bill Belichick and all that, good stuff. So I think there's not too much to be worried about right there. And then interesting, he's going to decide based on who the GM is. So we're going to want to find someone that he likes. Maybe it's, hey, Vrabel, come on in. You pick the GM or something along those lines. But I think there's some really cool things that we can go into. So I want to get into my thoughts about Vrabel, the history of him, all that for you guys that, maybe just want a little refresher. He's 54-45 as a head coach. He was 13-21 the last 2 seasons as the Titans head coach. They had a lot of injuries. That's one of the big things that you'll see people get upset with. And it's like, I guess it's his coaching style or whatever. He's kind of an abrasive dude. He pushes players to their limits, and maybe that's a concern to keep an eye on. He was coach of the year after the 2021-2022 season, so that's never a bad thing. They won the AFC South twice while he was the head coach. Apparently, he had a disagreement with the GM, Ron Carthon, and ultimately the team and him mutually parted ways. When they split, I thought, wow, Mike Vrabel is like a really smart, good head coach. There's not too many guys that I see get fired, and I say, that was a weird decision to make. Apparently, they tried to, or there were talks about trying to trade Mike Vrabel, but it would have been too complicated, and they ultimately ended up just releasing him. Now, I think that has a lot to do with it. The GM thing and him not having player control and not being able to at least have enough influence over the players that were coming in here. I think there were decisions made that maybe he didn't agree with. Remember, Will Levis was drafted at the top end of the second round in 2023. Was there any abrasiveness over that selection, or was he fully on board? He has made some critical comments of Levis throughout the course of last year, but not in like an overly bad way, just, kind of critical of him. I think he's not afraid to speak his mind. I think he makes tough decisions. He has benched, obviously he came in with Marcus Mariota. Not that he drafted Mariota, but Mariota was there when he became the head coach. He benched him for Ryan Tannehill, wound up making the playoffs. So, he's not afraid to make some tough decisions that, maybe some other Jet head coaches have not been around to make. But the whole not having control over player personnel and the GM thing is going to be a big piece to this whole puzzle. So who are the Jets going to bring in that's going to make that okay for him? Now, remember, Woody Johnson is totally overstepping right now for the last 2 years is what it seems like, according to all the reports. And I thought that would be the reason why Vrabel would not want to come here more than anything else. But the fact that he's considering it tells me at least we got a chance. So I want to talk about 3 players that I think the New York Jets could bring in. Really 2 players plus a GM candidate. I'll get to the GM at the end here. The first player on my list, and these are going to be 2 players at potential areas of need for the New York Jets. The first one, _Jedrick Wills, the left tackle from the Browns. He was drafted 1 pick ahead of the Jets in the 2020 draft, where we selected Mekhi Becton. He has started his entire time at left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, but he played every year of his collegiate career at Alabama on the right-hand side. He was a right tackle down in Alabama. So Olu could stay at the left-hand side, and Jedrick Wills could play the right-hand side, even though, he hasn't done it in a little bit of time. Now, this year, he did hyperextend his knee against a game against Cincinnati. It was the same knee that he had surgically repaired at the end of last season, so he made a business decision and said he was not 100% ready to go, and he pulled himself or told the team that he wasn't going to be ready to play for the next game. And ultimately, he wound up getting benched. The coach didn't like that, so he was a little surprised. Now, was he making a business decision in the sense of, he's a free agent at the end of the year, his contract voids at the end of the season, maybe he's looking for a big payday, he's still young, 25, I think, 26 years old, whatever it is, still young enough to be a relatively decent tackle in this league, but he's been injured each of the last 2 years. And I think the business decision part of things is the part that you have to drill down on. And Vrabel, being a consultant with the Browns right now, is going to have an inside track on the knowledge of what's going on with that particular player. Jets, Morgan Moses, going to be up for a contract at the end of the year. Would love to bring him back, but in the event you can't bring him back, then at the very least, you have someone in Wills who I think might be able to take a prove-it deal with the Jets, knowing he's likely to start and then could potentially earn a contract with the New York Jets. We're not going to have a crazy ton of cap space next year, and getting guys on, some degree of a discount, maybe because they have some sort of, whether it's injury history or some kind of, mental makeup that might be questionable, is probably the route we're going to have to go if Moses can't be retained. The next player I want to take a look at is Jameis Winston. This is a fun player, right? Jameis Winston just had like 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions in a game on Monday Night Football, and 2 of those wound up being pick sixes. You get this funny thing at the end where he's like, Lord, deliver me from pick sixes or whatever, and he's just a fun player to watch. I don't agree with him like a lot of the time, but at the very least, in a season that I think is probably set to be pretty bad in 2025, might not be the worst case scenario. He did sign a 1-year, $4 million contract with the Browns last year. Has he played himself into a higher elevated contract for next year? It's possible. I think at the very least, he could see a very talented Jets team from a young, youthful standpoint and might decide, hey, this could be a team that might be the future here. We might be able to give him the opportunity with Tyrod Taylor, with Jordan Travis. All 3 of these guys compete at a relatively low salary, and then best guy gets the job in 2026. Or we stink and we draft a quarterback in 2026, and you at least kind of figure it out if you don't want to pull the trigger on a quarterback in the draft in this upcoming year. It kind of depends where you all finish. But he's a 10-year vet, kind of nice. Career 70% completion percentage, adjusted completion percentage. His actual completion percentage is about a 61%. Obviously known for his 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions that 1 year in Tampa Bay, which was absolutely bonkers. But the guy always finds a way to make plays. And it's like even during the Browns game, he gets the pick six, it goes back the other way, and they're down by 8 points with a minute and a half left. He drives them all the way down the field into the red zone, inside the 10-yard line, where they have an opportunity to score and tie the game, and he throws an interception in the end zone. So he's the most frustrating quarterback you could possibly have, but at the very least, entertaining. I would very much enjoy watching Jameis Winston compared to what we're currently getting out of Aaron Rodgers. And the third player is not a player, it's actually a GM candidate, and this is Glenn Cook from the Browns. He is what's his title? He is the VP of player personnel, assistant general manager. He basically has been all over the place in terms of his career. He started as a linebacker at Miami, not the pro team, the college team. He was actually played for the Cubs for a little bit. I don't know if he played or just was on the team for a little bit. Then he wound up going and becoming a scout for the Indianapolis Colts. He spent time with the Packers, and then he's really worked his way up with the Browns. And over the course of the last 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, he's had interviews as a GM candidate. Even the Commanders brought him in. First day after the season, they're like, hey, we want to interview Glenn Cook. And Browns obviously allowed it. He didn't obviously get the job, but the 33rd team was helping the Commanders figure out who they were going to bring in as their GM, and the Jets hired the 33rd team. So at the very least, there's that little bit of a connection there. Obviously, there's some connection with Vrabel being with the Browns right now. He's going to have some type of working relationship with them. As far as him as an individual, he's a scouting dude. He's been a scout his entire life. And I very much want a scout guy. I don't want a money guy. Like Tannenbaum was always a pencil pusher and moving money around and whatnot. I want a guy that knows players. And this guy very much has been in organizations that I think understand the draft process and even like the trade process and things like that. They've made trades, the Browns have, for Amari Cooper, for Jerry Jeudy, for Elijah Moore from the New York Jets. He's always looking to add people to their roster and have that, especially at the wide receiver position that have flexibility, guys that can play inside and outside. There's injuries to this league all the time. I like it. I'm a big fan of this particular thing. Now, the other teams, and where this really comes in, that I think this could be the guy that Vrabel wants to bring to New York or wants the Jets to eventually hire, it's because he interviewed as a GM in 2022 for the Bears and for the Vikings, but then in 2023, when the Titans GM job opened up, he interviewed for the Titans, and then they ultimately wound up going with Ron Carthon. And I don't know if there was like if Vrabel wanted to go that other direction. There was the butting heads of the GM with the Titans, and then obviously Vrabel ends up with the Browns with Cook there. So maybe he wanted to learn more about the situation going on with Cook before he made his next jump to his next head coaching role. He could have had an opportunity this past year, decided to sit out. I like that. It gives him an opportunity to kind of reset his thought process. But Glenn Cook, Vrabel pairing would be very attractive to me. Now, you might be saying, okay, he's a defensive head coach, Vrabel is. Why would you want to do that? We just got rid of Saleh. We've had defensive head coaches basically for our entire career, short of Adam Gase. And look, I want a CEO style head coach. I want a guy that's not going to be able to back down from media. I think he's got a strong personality. I think he'll be able to deal with the New York media on a consistent basis. Not to mention, two of his offensive coordinators were poached to get head coaching roles in Matt LaFleur, the head coach of the Packers, and Arthur Smith, who was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, now the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. At the very least, it tells me he knows how to put guys around him. Now, you might not like Todd Downing and Keith Carter because those are guys that came from the Titans, but I would say this. Look, Keith Carter, for all the shit that Jet fans gave him, our offensive line's looking pretty decent. Like, Olu's looking like a stud. John Simpson's having a career year. Tittman's showing out. AVT is still kind of coming back from that Achilles injury, but I thought he's looked all right. And Morgan Moses is an absolute stud. So maybe, just maybe, Vrabel had to fire those guys because ownership wanted him to fire him, and there's all this like chaos going on over in the Titans. Vrabel's very much the guy I want to take a look at. Now, I did do a little bit of research. I wanted to see what Titans fans had to say about Vrabel in particular, and I dove into a Reddit thread going into all this, and this is one of the things that they said. He said, great game planner, player motivator, that's it. That's all the good there was. Practiced in such a manner that always got players hurt. Didn't get along with the front office unless they do what he wants. Randomly puts players in the doghouse for unknown reasons. Cannot make in-game adjustments to save his life. His coaching staff, Rolodex, is a bunch of washouts and community college coaches, is horrendous and boring with the media. All in all, he was extremely overrated during his time here, mostly due to a short-lived magical connection between Tannehill and A.J. Brown and having prime Derrick Henry and a ridiculous run of luck. I think that's probably a crazy oversimplification and maybe some like salty Titans fans if I had to say anything else, because like there is not one coach in our Jets, last 20 years that I feel like it was as respected as Vrabel currently is in the league right now. Like Rex had a success for those 2 years. Not trying to take anything away from Rex, but like very much was a clown show the entire time that we were here. There's always crazy stuff going on. I want someone who's a little more stoic, someone that will hold people accountable, someone that's going to be able to pick a good offensive staff. And I feel like we can take that with Vrabel. And if he wants to run a power running game, we got Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. So I really like this. I would love for the Jets to get him. I think you should throw the bag at him, Woody. And you know what? Bring Glenn Cook in at the same time, because I think that's probably who he wants. Guys, let me know your thoughts of Vrabel down below in the comment section. What do you think about the 3 people that I thought might follow him here to New York? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.
Jets!